Good morning, everyone. Hello, online people. This is a very unusual service today. As you noticed, there was no prelude. We will also not be having a musical meditation or a postlude, and that's because our musician, Carl Tramontana, sends his regrets. He was hospitalized this week, but is home and recovering, but it's still best for him to take it easy. So we're sending him all of our good wishes, and we will, thanks to Sherry, have some music on video. So Inga will now do our welcome and announcements.
The paper. Sorry. I'm glad it's a friendly group. My name is Inge Hill. I came to this, is this on? I came here in 2008. I liked it immediately because it was a friendly, welcoming group. I never looked anywhere. I just moved to this area, never looked anywhere else. And in 2009, I signed the book. And meanwhile, I've been in Sunday service, chair of the Sunday service committee for several years. And I do knitting and in the knitting circle and a few other things like that. Oh, and then I make the coffee Sunday morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. So please silence your phones if you haven't already done it. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury has been gathering together for 200 years. And as we work to build a more just world, we respectfully acknowledge that our physical building is on the traditional land of the Pecasset people. I'm so glad you were able to join us this morning because you are an essential part of the celebration today. Whether today is your first or 1,000th Sunday in our midst, in person or online, we are stronger because you are with us. If you are new to this community and joining us online, we invite you to introduce yourself and where you are connecting from in the chat box as you are comfortable. At the conclusion of today's service, you will have a chance to participate in a breakout group for individual connections and deeper check-ins. This is on a Zoom online. If you're new here in person, please fill out a visitor card at the table next to the exit before you leave today. We are one people, and many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We're all growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome here. There's a couple of announcements. Are they coming up? They're announcements. Let's see. The flowers this morning were given by Jane Leff and Randy Becker, and they were married here yesterday. So they left the beautiful flowers here. And Women Rise will meet tonight from 7 to 8:30 in the fellowship hall right here. And for more information, you can call Judy. Thank you.
Tis a gift to be simple, tis a gift to be free, tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, to be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed to turn. Turn will be our delight, till by turning, we come round right.
Okay. This is a poem by J.E. Abernathy Jr. called Enter into the Quiet. Let us seek the quiet and the calm. Let us lay aside our loud calling. Let us lay aside our struggle. Speak softly. Let us listen to the melodies that recall other proportions. Our moments tarry not with us. Let us then seek the dimension that endures, beyond all nowness and here-ness, beyond all requirements and particularity. Let us speak softly that we may hear. Let us enter into the quiet. And now Sally will lead us in the chalice lighting.
If you'll join me with the words that are printed in your order of service and on the screen. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life. And now it's time for our children's affirmation, so put your U's high in the sky. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. And now, silence.
In the silence, I can hear the waves crashing and the wind playing with my kite. At night, I can hear what the stars say, and in the morning, what the birds say. When I listen, I can hear my feet when dancing, my heart when running, my legs when swimming, my breath when still. In spring, I can hear bees loving flowers. In summer, trees chattering. In fall, leaves tumbling. In winter, snow twinkling. Be still. Listen. How many things can you hear?
Now is the time for our personal milestones. The recording will be stopped so that we may share this sacred space. Those of you online, if you have personal milestones, please put them in the chat and I will read them. Please keep just your milestones in the chat and directly comment to people as you will. I'll only be reading milestones. Before we And now for our song of reflection, Find a Stillness.
Find the stillness, oh, the stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, oh, the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
That was so lovely. I almost forgot to tell you that now it's time for our congregational offering. If you are with us for the first time, your presence is your gift to us. Members and friends online, please express your generosity by using the link or QR code found on the screen or in the chat. If you prefer, you may send a check to UUCD at 24 Clappard Ridge Road, Danbury 06811. Thank you for doing your part to support and sustain this community we love.
Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Deborah Oria, and I've been a member of this congregation for about 2.5 years. And I just finished off a recent stint on the board. So I'm moving on from that, but I do encourage board service to anybody who's interested at some point when you're ready. I'm going to talk with you today about my experience when I attended meeting for worship with the Quakers for a period of time. But first, a little background. Like many of us here, I've long been a wanderer on my spiritual journey. I was raised and confirmed as a Catholic. As many of you may already know, my father's very Catholic family left fascist Spain when my father was a boy. My great aunts, my grandmother's younger sisters, were cloistered nuns in Santa Maria del Mar. My family was devoutly Catholic, and I was raised in that tradition. The problem was I always had a lot of questions, and I found that I couldn't agree with many of the things that were said during CCD and Sunday Mass. Although I was a confirmed Catholic as a teenager, I left the Catholic Church, and in my college years and beyond, I started sampling other churches. Some years I sampled more actively than others, and many years went by. I felt I wanted a spiritual home and struggled to find one that fit. One group that I was curious about was Quakers, or the Religious Society of Friends, also known as the Society of Friends, who are a Protestant group who has unprogrammed Sunday meetings for worship. Now, I'm not an expert in Quakerism. I spent maybe a year going to Quaker meetings, so I'm going to relay my experiences with regard to that. There are people here who have had more experience with Quakerism than I ever did. And there is a rich history to the Quaker tradition, which I will not go into. However, I do encourage you to explore the Society of Friends on your own. What I like about Quakers is that they believe there is an important and sustained connection between worship and daily life, and not a disconnect like I saw when I went to church as a much younger person. Quakers believe we are all equal in the eyes of God, and no one person is closer to God or the divine than another. They recognize that God or the divine is found within each of us. Friends value life as sacred and avoid violence. To be more receptive to revelation, Quakers practice simplicity, integrity, and consistent adherence to one's values. Quakers have no creeds and have diversity of beliefs. Quakers, like UUs, live their values and are active in social justice and environmental causes. And in fact, we have visitors here today from Cincinnati. I have family that lives in not Cincinnati, but Dayton nearby, and Columbus. And I was out visiting a few years back. And when I visited one rainy Ohio day, there's a lot of those, right? In my opinion. When I visited the Cincinnati Museum of the Underground Railroad on a rainy Ohio day with my aunt, it became clear to me how deeply Quakers were involved in the Underground Railroad. I had no idea. And helping enslaved African people to escape forced servitude and abuse in order to find freedom. A very dear friend of mine is Quaker and has been for many, many years. And when she invited me to attend a Bring a Friend Day service with her, I said, yes, of course. I knew it was silent worship. And although I meditate, I had not experienced silent worship before, so I wasn't sure exactly what to expect. My friend and I quietly entered the meeting house and found seats on the long padded benches with backs where there were a few people quietly seated already. We nodded and smiled at them in order to say hi. There was no pastor or leader, since all people are considered equal and no one person has more greater access or is closer to the divine than another. Rows of benches are arranged so that we're facing each other. We're facing the people who are across from us. The meeting for worship begins when the first people enter and begin to sit in silence. As I mentioned earlier, although I had a regular meditation practice and was familiar with sitting in silence, this was different. This silence was not the same as meditation. This silence is meditation employed for worship. The idea is that one sits silently in expectant waiting for the spiritually divine. One intends to become inwardly still and clears aside the activities of the mind, such as to-do lists. Did I leave the garage door open? Did I turn off the iron? Or any other cluttering thoughts that normally fills our attention. And we put that aside in order to create an opening for an opportunity to experience the presence of the divine or the Holy Spirit. This is not an intellectual, thought-based exercise. It is a time for quiet spiritual receptivity. As when one meditates, thoughts will come to you during worship, meeting for worship, some of which are distraction and which are then gently let go. Other thoughts or images or feelings can arise during worship, which arise from a deeper source, and these are to be honored. These messages are allowed to dwell within and serve as our inner teachers, the voice of the divine within. On occasion, someone may be moved to offer a message during worship. This is also known as spoken ministry to the group. This may happen once or several times during a meeting, or not at all. When the message is delivered to the group, it is understood to be coming through the person who's speaking by divine inspiration or from God directly. Sometimes it may not just be words that are offered. Sometimes it'll be a song, which I always find delightful. These are not the intellectual messages of the head. Rather, they are divinely inspired and of the heart. These delivered messages are considered by the individuals in the group who are silently worshiping. And if the message holds meaning for them, then they will let it dwell within them. And if it doesn't, it's most likely meant for someone else, and they will let it go. Silent meeting for worship generally continues for about an hour, and a designated elder is responsible for paying attention to time, and at the end of worship will turn to nearby friends and shake hands. This signifies the end of the meeting. No two meetings were ever the same. And I almost always found myself surprised at how quickly the meeting for worship would go by. Like us, a coffee hour would take place after worship where people would catch up with each other and check in. Now, as I said earlier, I attended Quaker meetings for worship for about a year. It was a small congregation, a very small congregation, and we all got to know each other quite well. What I liked about silent worship was the sense that we were all together in the experience. It was hard to put it into words, but I often felt that we were unified in the act of worship, even though we were doing it independently within ourselves. It took me a few meetings for worship to kind of figure out how to go about it, because there were really not any instructions. Meditation for me is a solo activity, but I've also meditated in a group practice known as a Sangha. And I found that there was great support in group meditation in which we created and held space for one another to meditate and to just be. In participation in Sangha, even though I didn't really know my fellow meditators, I grew to feel quite close to them through our group meditation. In my experience, I felt that a Quaker meeting for worship went beyond the supportive Sangha experience of group meditation. To me, it was a personal encounter of the divine that can only be attained through the collective attention of the individuals present and participating in the meeting for worship. Through direct communal attention. It's not something that can be done in singular practice. This became even more evident to me when someone would offer an inspired message to the group. It seemed like we were all in a very similar space in our silence. As the messages offered often reflected or contributed to something I found myself sitting with already. I felt as if we were all flying in formation in a spiritual sense, and for lack of better words. Perhaps it is the sought after presence of the Holy Spirit that had descended upon us. So today, I would like to offer you the experience of silent worship. Don't worry, we won't go the full hour. It'll only be about 10 minutes or so. I want this time to be long enough to just give you a taste of the experience. And at the end, I will act as the responsible elder and monitor the time. And when it is up, I will get up and shake hands with a few people. In turn, those people will shake hands with others, and it should spread across us all. I usually say peace when I shake hands. You may do that or simply say good morning to your neighbor. So I invite you to get comfortable in your seat. And you know, if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, then do so. Or soften your gaze if you prefer, and get centered within yourself. And gently let go of any intellectual, mental clutter, which inevitably will come up. After all, that's how our mind works. Gently let that go. Listen within and allow yourself to become open to deeper messages and meanings that arise from within. And now I invite you to enter into the silence.
remembering my time in Quaker silence, which was beautiful in its very own way. I was married during my first marriage during the silence. We simply stood up, told each other our vows, and said, then back down. Laid on everyone sign that they had witnessed that the marriage took place and it was perfectly legal in a Quaker community.
So I went to a camp when I was a child for about a decade, and it was like every other sleepaway camp: archery, horseback riding. But it had one unique feature that it was founded by Quakers 100 years earlier. So every Sunday, we gathered in the woods in a circle, and we had Quaker. And over the years, every Sunday, there was a story that I heard numerous times at these meetings. And it goes like this. A man dies, and he goes to the pearly gates, and he's given a choice of whether or not he can go to heaven or hell. And he says, well, can I see each before I make my choice? And the angel said, sure. So first he goes to hell, and he sees a banquet table filled with food. And it's every food you can imagine. And everyone's sitting around the table and have these giant appendages from their shoulder down to their hands. And it's almost like a giant spoon. And they can't really bend their elbows. And so there's all this food in front of them, but they can't eat. And everyone at the table is completely emaciated, just thin skin and bones. He says, I've seen enough, let me see heaven. So he takes it to heaven. It's the same table, same thing with the people. There are these giant appendages. They can't bend their arms. They can reach the food, but they can't put it in their mouths. Except all the people are happy and content. And they look completely healthy and full. And the man turns to the angel and says, I don't understand. What's the difference? And he said, it's simple. In heaven, they feed each other.
and Brad's great-great-grandfather, Robert Purvis, was a Black abolitionist and feminist, and he and his wife founded a Quaker meeting in Philadelphia, where he's buried in a Quaker cemetery next to one of his best friends, Lucretia Mott. Their home was a stop on the Underground Railroad, and when he died, he had an obituary in the New York Times, which called him the president of the Underground Railroad.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for trying on the Quaker Quiet in order to listen to divine inspiration. And we had the gift of spoken ministry here this morning as well, which is wonderful and very inspiring to me for sure. I hope that some inner wisdom may have presented itself to tell you. I know it's only 10 minutes, but I hope some inner wisdom may have presented itself so that you may carry it out into the world today. And if not, at least I hope you found it to be centering and relaxing. Thank you. Now, Sally will lead us in the extinguishing of the chalice.
Please join me. The words are in your order of service and also on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. And now let's sing our song of celebration. Today it is When Our Hearts Are in a Holy Place.
When we travel our story from deep inside.
Thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. Closing words is a poem called Draw Breath. It's a poem by Jeffrey Whedon. Breathe in the quiet purpose of this place. Through outward stillness, seek a calm within. Here we can find forgiveness and forgive. Here, feel the healing miracle begin. Breathe out the busy world, the teeming mind, the follies, fears, and failures of the weak. Breathe out contention, pettiness, and pride, and wait and trust for that God to speak. Breathe in communion, friend with quiet friend, each drawing closer to in this timeless hour, as all our different needs and gifts are drawn to the one source of comfort, love, and power. Breathe out at last to God, the heart's full thanks that we have this vision, known this grace, renewed through love. Let us that love extend through all our daily life beyond this place. That's it.